What's going on, Jerome's? Made it to this beautiful Friday. Feeling really damn good today. So it's time for another Vikings news dump and also some NFL adjacent storylines. So first up is from Rap Sheet. Souses, the commies. All right, so the commies didn't get Ben Johnson. They didn't get Bobby Slowick. And they didn't get Mike McDonald. So on to the next one. Dan Campbell, DQ, finally gets his second head coaching gig. Souses, the Commanders have found their new coach as owner Josh Harris is set to hire Cowboys DC Dan Quinn as head coach. Quinn gets the second NFL head coaching gig, but not with the Seahawks as many expected. He lands in Washington. And DQ is a guy that I respect. I think that in general, the Cowboys defense greatly improved during his time there. Not so much in the playoffs. But Quinn, Dan Quinn won like 85% of a Super Bowl. And it's tough, the whole 28-3 with the Falcons. But, it's rough. The game can be rough. But overall, I think he and Dimitroff did some good things with the Falcons. He and Kyle Shanahan, when they were inked up. And that's the thing about Quinn is he's a defense guy. He needs to have himself a partner in crime, someone to take care of the offense. And he had that with Kyle Shanahan before Shanny got the Niners job. And now, reports are that Chip Kelly might get the commies OC job. The NFL is better with Chip Kelly in it, man. See, remember when Chip Kelly took over the Eagles and his run game offense was the cat's ass for like 3 weeks, and then the league caught up to it. It's crazy, man. But Dan Quinn, respect. Now, is he too much in the same mold as Ron Rivera? Who knows, man? Who knows? But we'll see what happens. Now, what's interesting and what brings it back to us, because that's what matters, is now there is a opening as Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. And Calvin Watkins, longtime beat writer for the Cowboys, reported this. Former Vikings head coach and Cowboys DC Mike Zimmer is interested in the current vacant Cowboys gig, a person with knowledge of the thinking said. So, it's probably come from Zimmer, right? And they're going to go through the normal list. I'm sure that Vrabel has been tied with some interest there, although I feel like he could just sit out for a year. And, by the way, this picture, all right, so look over Zimmer's right shoulder. So the left side of the picture, that's Dat Win, baby. The greatest linebacker in NFL history. Hashtag one of us. So the Zimmer ties are pretty natural. Like, he and Jerry Jones have a very good relationship, as well as Zimmer, DC and DB coach in Dallas for many years. That's where he linked up with Deion Sanders. That's where Zimmer joined up with the Bill Parcells tree for a number of seasons. And it would make sense. And, Zimmer, I believe, one or maybe both of his daughters still live in Dallas, so they still have some roots there. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, if Zimmer wants to get back into the game, Dallas, the defense, especially with Diggs coming back from that ACL, they got pieces, man. They'll be good to go. And if Deron Bland has 17,596 pick sixes, they'll be fine. But this sets up the even better dynamic of if and when Mike McCarthy gets fired in season next year, which I feel like could happen. Zimmer's like, I'm back, baby. Interim head coach, going to earn the head coaching gig. I love it. And so, this is my favorite conspiracy theories, man. It's a conspiracy, man. So, after, what was it, Jason Garrett? Yeah, must have been Jason Garrett. So, after the Vikings made the playoffs in 2019, if the Vikings didn't beat the Saints in the wild card game, I firmly believe that Zimmer would have been fired and Stefanski would have been elevated to head coach. Instead, Stefanski took the Browns job in 2020, and Zimmer remained for a couple of seasons. But you look at the calendar there. The Cowboys waited to fill their vacancy for a while until the Vikings won in the wild card round. It was clear that Zimmer was going to be back. And then they're just like, here's Mike McCarthy. Right. So I firmly believe that the Cowboys were looking to trade for Zimmer after the 2019 season. And the Vikings were going to elevate Stefanski, but didn't work out, and is what it is. So ranking the hiring. So this is from 33rd Team. I mean, there's an interesting mix here. So you have a couple of retreads with Dan Quinn and Jim Harbaugh, and Antonio Pierce, a interim guy who got bumped up. Raheem Morris is also a second bite at the apple. He was head coach of the Buccaneers for 3 seasons, and then you have a mix of young dudes. All right, so I would rank the hirings. Let's see here. I mean, it's hard to argue with Harbaugh. Harbaugh's a weirdo, but he's a winner, man. So I'll say Harbaugh 1. Mike McDonald 2. Pierce 3. I just think Pierce gets it, and you can tell that the entire locker room just loves him, man. Morris 4. Canlis 5. No, Mayo 5. Canlis 6. Quinn 7, and Callahan 8. I'm just not believing in the Titans, man. And yeah, Callahan, sure. Hey, I was near Joe Burrow, and my dad's a good offensive line coach. I mean, that's what that feels like, man. But speaking of Antonio Pierce and the Raiders, so apparently he's getting his OC, man, Mike Garafolo. The Raiders have locked in on Cliff Kingsbury as their new offensive coordinator. No deal yet, but it's expected to get done. It got done. Following a year at USC, the former Arizona Cardinals head coach returns to the NFL as part of Antonio Pierce's coaching staff. And connecting the dots, beep, bop, 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 boop. Kingsbury, his year at USC, I mean, he and Caleb Williams' family had a very good relationship. And the Raiders, like, the thing about the Raiders in Vegas is that they have to have stars. They have to make a big-time splash. And I think it's a spot where the Raiders, I mean, they could move all the way up. So the Raiders sitting at 13. Could they get up to 1? It's going to cost them a lot. And, probably 3 1s, probably 2 2s, maybe a player somewhere in that area, because Chicago's not going to give away the pick for free. But, I mean, Caleb Williams could just, frankly, just say, like, I'm not going to play for the Bears. And then the Bears will either have to try and call his bluff, or they'll have to make a deal. And I still think that they can get a haul for Caleb Williams because he is still seen as a generational prospect. And I know people are going to complain, oh, but Caleb Williams says he wants equity. That's the dumbest report ever. Like, he does not want ownership in a team. That's ridiculous. Like, Mahomes probably couldn't even finesse that, even given his stature, right? So it's ridiculous to have a rookie wanting that. It's dumb. And frankly, if you actually believe the report, you should have your intelligence insulted. Or maybe it just flew over your head. Who knows, man? But, I mean, we've seen this before. So John Elway didn't want to play for the Baltimore Colts, and he worked his way eventually to Denver. Eli Manning, but really Archie Manning is like, no, we don't like A.J. Smith, then GM of the San Diego Chargers. We don't want to go there. So they worked their way to the Giants. And Caleb Williams could do the same thing. Like, it's not unprecedented. And I think that connecting the dots, I mean, could the Raiders make that massive move up, go get Caleb Williams, reunite him with Cliff Kingsbury? And, I mean, Antonio Pierce is good. Well, Antonio Pierce coached Jaden Daniels in high school. It's great. And at Arizona State. Anyways, what's really great is Andrew DePaulo, one of the Vikings' 3 Pro Bowl games guys, Daniil and C.J. Hamby, the others. So DePaulo, second-team All-Pro this year, first-team All-Pro last year. He got robbed in terms of being one of the best long snappers in the game. So the Pro Bowl games, they do all these skills challenges. It's kind of like American Gladiators. It's kind of neat. But so he needed 7 points, and then he got 9, right? So I think he had a smart strategy. So he had 40 seconds, and he just snapped at the largest spot. So only worth 1 point, but would have been the easiest for him to snap. And even though it's slightly off, I mean, it kind of reminds you of the fake punt that they ran where DePaulo had to snap it directionally. I mean, that's skill, man. I love it. And then after he sutured up the 9, he started taking some shots at the 4. Didn't make it. A better long snapper would have made it. Nah. But DePaulo looking good. And speaking of Pro Bowls, so unfortunately, the Vikings did send guys to the Pro Bowl in 2009 because they weren't playing in the Super Bowl. But Bryant McKinney, the pride of the University of Miami, that's just the U being the U. Throwback Thursday in honor of Pro Bowl weekend. Here's a look at your 2009 Vikings Pro Bowlers. So left to right, you got Bryant McKinney. I mean, a guy who's 6'8" and 350 should not have feet like he did. Like he was, I mean, He could have been Jonathan Ogden if he wanted to be, but he didn't want to be. Hutchinson, Hall of Fame, HOF, Michigan. Now, one of my favorite things about Hutchinson is that during the draft, forget which year he was drafted, but when he was coming out of Michigan, there was an anecdote. I think Mel Kiper had is like, hey, Steve Hutchinson was at dinner, and he had a steak. And then for dessert, they asked him what he wanted for dessert, and he said, another steak. I respect that, man. That's fantastic. Bert Favore, Adrian, Jared Allen, Heath Farwell, the special teams Capitone. You got Kevin Williams, should be in the Hall of Fame. Percy Harvin. God, Percy was so good. And, you know, a lot of people just chalked Percy's behavior to him being a problem or a locker room cancer or just a bad kid. When it turns out like he just had extreme anxiety and he had mental issues which weren't really kosher to talk about at the time. I mean, if Percy Harvin played now, he would have gotten counseling, he would have gotten the help that he needed, and he would have been a star. Like Percy Harvin, he was special, man. He was an absolute stud. And then Sidney Rice, the pride of South Carolina, having his best season with Bert Favore, getting a big old contract with the Seattle Seahawks. Actually, Farwell and Kevin Williams went and joined the Seahawks later, which is funny because Hutchinson came from the Seahawks in the poison pill deal. But also, it's so stupid. Like those late aughts jerseys where the numbers were so far spaced apart. And not just the practice jerseys, like the actual jerseys too. It was really distracting. But something that's also distracting is the best cornerback in the draft. Now, respect to Terrion Arnold, respect to Kool-Aid, respect to Wiggins, but Quinyon Mitchell of Toledo is a guy that I've quickly fallen in love with. You love the size, you love the length, and the Vikings are definitely doing their due diligence. Purple Persuasion. Per Alec Lewis of The Athletic, the Vikings have met with Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback Toledo, at the Senior Bowl. Lewis goes on. One player of serious interest this year is cornerback Quinyon Mitchell, who shared Wednesday that he had met with the Vikings, the University of Toledo product, played in 39 games over the last 3 years, and in 2023 was Pro Football Focus's highest graded cornerback among 200 qualified cornerbacks. Now, you remember last year, their numero uno draft pick, Mekhi Blackman, was pretty high up there in PFF grades as well. So I do think that Quinyon Mitchell is, never say never, but I think he's a lock to be a first-round pick. I think that he'll be top half of the first-round pick. I think that he has a chance to be cornerback one when it's all said and done. I really do. Like, it's a good cornerback class, but there isn't like a tier one Sauce Gardner, Stingley guy that you're going to see out coming off the board. Something that you could see coming up is possible extension with the Vikings and head coach Kevin O'Connell. Now, reportedly, when he was hired, it was a 5-year deal. 2 years have already gone through, and perhaps extending things out as well as enriching his deal could be in the offing. Vikes fan page. Contract extension between the Vikings and head coach Kevin O'Connell could happen before the 2024 season. Darren Doogie Wolfson mentioned on Score North. O'Connell is entering the third year of his 4-year deal. I'm an idiot. And Minnesota loves Kevin that much. So part of it is rewarding. The 13-4 season. Also last year, if Kirk didn't get hurt, ideas, meow. Also, you really don't want your coach head into a lame duck season. All right, and even though it wouldn't be a lame duck season per se, because you would have an additional year left, you want to take care of your guys if you see them as part of the future long term. And speaking of the future long term, so the Vikings on Instagram. So on social media, the Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent, and his contract voids after the franchise tag window, and the Vikings can't tag him. The Vikings can't really do much with him except for extend him. But Cousins has been featured quite a bit on their social media channels, and the Vikings on Instagram put out like a 2-minute hype video for Kirko, and it doesn't seem like a move that you would make if Kirk Cousins was leaving. Now, obviously, the player personnel department and the social media team probably don't discuss strategy together, but it seems like if the team had zero interest in bringing Kirk back, that would be put out in a memo. We're just like, hey, social media team, cool it, tranquillo, with the Cousins highlights. But I don't know. Again, I sort of am getting on board with the Tommy Kramer ideas. It's like, hey, build the offensive line, let Cousins walk, and bring in Gardner Minshew for a couple of seasons. I could get down with that. And also draft your quarterback in the future in the second round. But who knows, man? Who knows? But that's it. That's it. That's your Vikings news dump for this beautiful, wonderful Friday. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skol, production value.